outdoor design, luxury outdoor living. amwoodland.com.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Joe Biden getting better? That's what James Freeman wrote in his Best of the Web column for the Journal. It's been almost a full 5 days since VP Biden lauded the fundamental decency of many congressional Republicans, and he still hasn't apologized. That's what constitutes progress, I guess, considering he came into the race offering offering civility, but then has been drifting closer to, the party's cultural Marxists ever since. He believes, does Freeman, that if Biden can retain his gracious tone and not fall prey to socialist orthodoxy, then he can actually put together a formidable coalition. He also has to stay out of his own way. A fun clip of Biden yesterday in Iowa.
Is he smelling somebody's hair?
No. He's not misidentifying the dates of
The assassination of
he's not doing
JFK?
that. But he's not talking about, he's not comparing poor kids to white kids, but he is comparing crowd sizes. And this was from Bret Baier's special report yesterday with Ducey's kid reporting.
No. It depends on what the nature of the event is. What I'm trying to do is go around from town to town, and I'm drawing as bigger crowds or bigger than anybody. Have you seen anybody draw bigger crowds than me here in this state?
Yes.
Well, you have. Where?
In Des Moines.
In Des Moines?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. That was very matter of fact.
Actually, I have.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
Des Moines, I saw bigger crowds than. Joe, you should think about measuring yourself by other candidates the same way Chevy Chase measures himself to other golfers, by height. For more on this topic and the G7 this weekend, we're pleased to be joined by Bret Baier, host of the aforesaid special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time. Also, of course, author of the book 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Morning. So starting with the Democrats and the state of play there with their next debate right around the corner and the field for that debate at least being narrowed to 10. Biden, Bernie, and Warren. Is anybody else still in play here?
I think that there are some people who look at Kamala Harris and say there's a chance, but she's gone backwards really in the polls since that one time where she took the swing against Biden in the first debate. And there's a lot of people looking at her campaigning style and how she's dealt with questions about Medicare for all that have left them wanting, let's just say. I do think Biden, he's surprising some people in his ability to hold on to his lead despite some pretty big gaffes. I mean, if you think back to the Parkland kids, that was a huge gaffe.
Yeah.
Where he said he was vice president and the Parkland kids came to see him and he met with them as they were lobbying Congress, and senators and congressmen ran away from them. But Parkland happened when it was Vice President Pence. And the kids he was talking about, according to the campaign, were Sandy Hook kids who were like 5 and 6 and 7, and they weren't lobbying Congress. So that was a really big one. He did it twice. He's had a couple, we believe in truth, not facts. He's had a couple of, bumbling stumbles, and he is not doing any one-on-one interviews. If you notice that he hasn't done many one-on-ones.
Yeah, he also just even in the debates too, even in the second debate where he performed a little bit better and he held up a little bit better in some of the pointed exchanges. By the end of that debate, he was sort of starting to fade and bumble a bit.
Well, he gave out a fake ad, like a website,
including his clothes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think when his wife comes out and says, you may have to hold your nose and swallow, but he's the guy who could win, that's not the best pitch, as you're getting into a primary. However, Democrats' number one goal is to beat Donald Trump. And if they think at the end of this process that Biden is going to be the guy that can do it, even if the policies are not as bold as they'd like them to be, it's likely that he could pull it out if he manages to hold on here in these debates.
But let's just say he self-implodes. Who's next? Who do you think would be right there?
Well, I think best positioned is Elizabeth Warren and how she's campaigning. I mean, her campaign's very accomplished. She's got a great ground game in Iowa. She has a policy for everything. But I also think the Trump administration and the Trump campaign really wants to run against Elizabeth Warren. And so I think there may be another moderate alternative who pops up. I just don't know who that is, whether it's Michael Bennet from Colorado or Amy Klobuchar. Someone would take the role if Biden implodes.
Well, it's funny you say, too, about Warren having a plan for anything, because Kim Strasso, of course, is often on your show writing the Wall Street Journal. The one area she's missing a plan, healthcare. There's no healthcare section on her site. Yes, she's suggested she's with Bernie on some version of Medicare for all, but she really hasn't been specific about it. Now contrast that with Bernie's big rollout of his Green New Deal yesterday, all $16 trillion worth. And it seems like in order to occupy that lane of the socialist, Democrat socialist favored son or daughter, it's going to be one, who can come up with the biggest government overhaul of what the biggest sector, whether it's energy or healthcare.
Well, I agree with you. And I think in order to hold that lane, they need to see that. It's almost a litmus test. And Bernie's kind of got the original on all of that. I think that there's some skittishness about locking in to Medicare for all because it's just not realistic as far as getting past Congress, which is why you've seen Kamala Harris have such a tough time explain what she really means, because she doesn't want to lock in.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's say Biden implodes, she could say, you thought I said Medicare for all? I meant all y'all should like your Medicare. And Green New Deal? Green New Deal? No, I said I want a green drink for breakfast. She could become the moderate if Biden implodes.
Yeah, but I mean, but the problem she has now with playing that little two-step game is one of her problems. I think is properly diagnosed. I don't know who was it in National Review, maybe Kyle Smith, is that she's coming across as inauthentic. She's coming across as somebody who's mouthing the words, but doesn't really hear the music, and that's not going to play with the base.
I agree with you, and she's got problems as far as courting the base, but also not distancing kind of the meat of the Democratic Party, which I think accurately a lot of people have realized the Democrats overall are not the Twitter Democrats. They're much different. It's not a monolith.
Where's your sense from the people you speak with of the Trump campaign's belief of their position right now? There's a lot of polling coming out showing very high disapproval numbers and so forth. But do they believe that sans a recession, they're in a strong position, or are they worried about the president's unpopularity?
I think they believe that they have the ability with this president, with this candidate, to once you get one alternative, to be able to essentially tear that person up with not only policy, but specifics, and obviously Donald Trump on the trail. So they feel confident about that. The economy is a question mark, but if you talk to a lot of economists, they'll tell you the U.S. is still the place where the world is putting their money. And until that changes, and by the way, Jerome Powell is taking it on the chin from Donald Trump as the Federal Reserve. It's possible that there is a downtick, but is it one that really affects how people feel about how they have been over the past 4 years?
All right. So tonight, President Trump and the First Lady leave for the G7 summit. What do you think is going to be his main mission?
Well, that's tough to say. I mean, there's a lot of missions here. There's a lot of moving parts. I think Iran is a big question about, how the European countries are going to deal with this crumbling Iran deal. I think, I'm sure he's going to bring up NATO and defense, spending for all these nations, but mainly the economy and getting these trade deals across the finish line. If he doesn't get China, but he manages to get, I don't know, the EU or another trade deal. That boosts the economy in a way that a lot of people aren't looking at right now.
If he can't pick up Greenland, do you think maybe the Brits will sell him the Isle of Man or something? You think he comes away with some sort of territory or?
Maybe a trade.
I got some states I'd like to suggest him trading.
Yeah, you want to
trading
trade
out for.
Illinois.
Playing cards.
Yeah.
There's playing cards. They're all bringing a deck of their favorite colonial conquest.
He's Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, of course, special report, 5 p.m. weekdays, Chicago time. The book, 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, a good one.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Sheet metal is a big part of commercial and industrial